Chris, have you ever been on a company's website and seen a CTA button, and I assume we all know what CTA buttons are, that said, talk to sales?
Yeah, I've seen one of those.
Is there a call to action that is more emblematic of a let's force people through the sales funnel to buy way of thinking than that one?
There's not.
I have not been able to think of one either. Um, the Give me your take on why.
Um, why there? Yeah, I like it leaves it open, right? It's not like call for quote, which is much more specific, and you can say, "Okay, I'm not ready for quote, so I'm clearly not going to hit that button." But there's just enough uncertainty behind it to where if I'm clicking it, I probably need help with something, but it definitely puts I guess sales in the driver's seat to determine how the process should go from there. And because I don't like that, I'm probably not clicking the button.
Right. Yeah. Um, the in my estimation, and I've not word for word, but I've been in rooms where this conversation has been had, where the CTA that everybody wishes they could put in that space is buy now, but either the sales process or typically like a successful purchase doesn't allow for that, right? But somebody came from a consumer context or read that, like, oh, you should have a buy now or apply today or action oriented specific CTA in your ads. And so, like, let's do that on our website. And it's like, well, they can't buy now. We have to do a site review. We have to talk about permitting. We have to do a materials analysis or whatever, right, for these high friction, complicated purchase processes. And so you go through a couple of iterations, and the best thing you can come up with is like, well, we can put talk to sales on the website as a button.
And this is because we only know how to solve for this moment with a conversation,
Right.
right?
And I would argue like that's actually good. Maybe what's a problem is that the only organization within the company that we want to talk to people is sales, and like begrudgingly service or account management or success secondarily if things are going wrong, and then when we renew. The What that terrible call to action gets right, and I think your assessment is correct as well, that what it gets right is like there are purchases that people make where they say like, look, I need to talk to somebody, and we're like, oh well, are you a customer yet? If yes, account manager. If no, well, sales, right? Like the only reason we would talk to somebody who's not a customer is to scope a deal and sell to them. So I want to talk to a human. Can I get some help here? Is, oh, talk to sales, right? Is what that gets translated into.
And
The
not
Go
for
ahead.
the reason that sales can help them, but
Right.
somebody needs to manage the process now. And
Right.
sales is going to own that relationship at some point. So they get to see what's what.
Right. If it's There's a lot of facets to this, but like, well, if it's possible they might buy something, then we should definitely have them talk to sales, right? They're these days are, I think, disappearing, and at least in the American economy. But there used to be a lot of times where you would walk into a business and there would be somebody whose job it was to see what you needed and get you to the right person or department, or gently put their hand on their shoulder and say like, I think you should be heading back out the door, right? a concierge or a front desk, right? Some service businesses, restaurants, hotels, right, still have someone kind of like that, but largely we don't. So what that means is, well, all non-existing customer conversations get funneled into sales, right? And we don't allow for the possibility that there are other interactions, for one thing, and for another, we just kind of we make it a funnel, not in the sales respect, but in the actual physical analogy of like, well, look, anything that kind of comes in this direction, we're just going to shoot into sales, right?
Yeah. And like
And
at its like if we were to just define the words that relate to business development rep and sales development rep,
right,
right? Like
right,
if that's what it actually meant, like of course you have that person where it's like, hey, what do you need? Like how do you like can we help? Are we a fit? Right?
right, right.
And that's where
Business
just
development rep especially, right, like is
yeah,
maybe a great example of yet another acronym that we have put on a label that we have put onto something that doesn't actually in practice describe what that person's role is, but would have been a good idea to begin with, right? Like CRM, customer relationship management, is usually like sales process enforcer,
right.
business development rep whose job is to actually like develop relationships and frame for people, in a one to few context of like, here's why we exist and how we help, and if you have anything like this, like let's talk and establish relationships within the community, within the ecosystem, with the individuals. Yeah,
Yeah.
great example.
Yeah. And like it's crazy when you just remove the word rep. Like if you're just saying like, what do you do? It's like I'm in business development versus I'm a business development rep. Those should not like they shouldn't mean starkly different things. They do. And
Right.
like where I first started, I remember when I first met Tony Dowling was a part of this small group that DataBox was putting together these conversations, and having to translate for Tony what was happening on LinkedIn in terms of why he didn't really need some other marketing person to create leads because he was there just like participating and adding value. And whenever somebody would raise their hand, he could be there and say, oh yeah, like here's the help in whatever form it is. And it's like full life cycle business development where of course your subject matter expertise is best positioned to actually create value there, right? So I think when people click on talk, like we got the talk to part right, but
Right.
and why I brought up the other example of sometimes it's an account manager on the other side of that is in the material science space. The salesperson knows they've like when the technical inquiry comes in, they're unlikely to be able to help with the technical side of that. So it's like, let me have a call just so that I can like for sure route it to the person that's going to be able to help you, which is the scientist,
Right.
right? And when we started to create this system where people could see that activity, it just like, and if you were at an in-person event, there would not be that layer. You could just talk directly to the scientist. Everybody knows that conversation and
Right.
that opportunity moves much faster and trust gets built. Yet we've created these scenarios where it's like, okay, well, how does the system need to work so that it gets routed to the right salesperson that's going to be compensated from that region? And then we'll figure out how to actually help, the customer, the buyer.
Right, right. And I mean, I think I would say another factor that contributes to that is that in in a in a one-to-one in a personal scenario, right? If you're at a meetup or an event or a conference, from a marketing standpoint, you would say that the audience there is essentially predetermined to be part of your market, your addressable market, right? And so They're like, well, yeah, they can just come up and talk to us at our booth and we'll talk to anybody because, we've essentially skipped that qualification process. Now, anybody who's imported a list or got a fishbowl of business cards from a conference knows that that is a farce. But that's the argument that we make to ourselves. And then we try to move that interaction into the digital space. And we are justifiably concerned about wasting the time of a subject matter expert who has actual, materials work to do or lots of customers to talk to. And so we make the not wrong-headed decision of like, well, we don't want just some, we don't want some competitor doing corporate espionage coming into our lead pipeline and getting intel out of our engineers. Spoiler: those engineers spot those people way faster than your salespeople do, if that's what you're trying to do. So we pre-qualify, right, those conversations, running our sales playbook. There's a lot of problems with all of this mess, right? Like we build a house of cards trying to solve like one problem and its adjacencies, and then you do that 1,000 times, and then suddenly you have this whole like Rube Goldberg machine of a sales process. Talk to sales as a CTA is generally like pretty poor because, for one thing, another aspect of this that we didn't talk about is having interviewed clients across or customers across lots of clients as we're doing this audience building work and trying to talk about how to create a path to value for them. They generally interpret talk to sales as a CTA, right? They know that that's what the words say, but what they feel like they're clicking on is a button that says, "I'm ready to buy now. Just come whack this piñata," right? And we're talking. Go ahead.
Right. Why would I want to talk to sales unless I'm ready to be sold to? Like.
Yes, great articulation, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about hand raisers today, and the hand raiser stage we describe in the value path as somebody who is expressing, they are raising their hand, not saying like I'm ready to buy this instant. Some people, yes, right. That is the point of their journey that they're at, where they first take a hand raising action with respect to your company. But a lot of people are raising their hand trepidatiously, saying like, I don't know if you're for me. I have a need or something that I think you fit, or I think your business, I think I know what your business does, and I think I have that problem. I found you in a Google search or from ChatGPT. But I need somebody to, I need to understand that better. I need more context. We're going to talk about some specifics, but in the kind of cram people through your sales and marketing funnel perspective, hand raisers, that people generally, and by generally, I mean, I've never seen this not be the case, say a hand raiser is a lead, right? That means, and the best process that most companies have for that is talk to a rep, whether that's sales or SDR. By restricting your understanding of hand raisers to somebody who is raising their hand in order to enter your sales process, by which you assume you mean they are in the throes of their buying process, you are actually turning away more people from entering your actual buying process, which happens after hand raising, than you are letting in, because you are misunderstanding the reasons that people might raise your hand and seek your experience, your knowledge, your expertise, your differentiation. And that means you are under defining your hand raiser counts if you are modeling your funnel this way. And you are serving them poorly, the ones that bruised and battered managed to get into your pipeline because they ran through a gauntlet of your sales and marketing process that didn't serve their needs. And everybody that would have been willing to say, like, look, I'm not, I think I'm in the right place. Can I talk to somebody? They're going to see a talk to sales, and they're going to be like 20% confident, maybe, that they're in
Right.
the right place and that this would make sense. They're going to be like, I'm not going to it's not worth it. I don't want to get hounded.
Right.
And then have the rep go like try to multi-thread and pull my boss in for something that I wasn't even sure was like what I needed. Um, and so the key here to how do we, if we want to use sales leader speak, how do we generate more hand raisers, and how do we become more effective at converting our hand raisers into the next stage of our sales pipeline or of the value path? Is, look, you need to understand the reasons that people might raise their hand, and most of them, and in fact, I would argue the most powerful reasons that somebody would raise their hand to talk to somebody at your company are not I'm ready to buy right now. If that's your hand raisers, then you're really screwing up your relationship with your pre-purchase prospects.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say like there's a third scenario, which is probably most detrimental, like, and why you need to solve for this is a technical buyer who's like ready to go, right? But they have no idea what the process looks like or, how it's going to be integrated into their situation.
Right.
And if they want to say, I need help, and it's a technical help need, they're going to see that talk to sales button. Like, nope, sales can't help me. They cannot help me with what my question is, right? And that's where I think what we're gonna talk about is, and I'm starting to see this on the scoring side of things. I may have mentioned before, where it's like you want your hand raisers to go up, right? And it would be nice if we could just all of a sudden find all the buy mode people, right? But at the end of the day, you can't. And so maybe we can make it easier for people to show us that their hand is raised, right? And if you can,
Yes.
and if you can scale it down to just if their hand is raised, the statement "I need help" applies. And if somebody said "I need help," what are all the things that you could help them with?
Right. And I mean, that's a great articulation. And I would say if you were to, like, on the street, as an example, and somebody walked up and said, I need help, the first thing you would say is, yeah, what do you need? Help with what? Right. And if you were in a booth at a trade show running the booth and somebody came up, somebody walked by, looked at your logo, looked at your materials, walked up and said, hey, I need help, you would say, you're like, yeah, what do you need help with? Right. We fail to serve hand raisers in our businesses because we don't have an affordance for that. Somebody say, hey, I need help. It's like, okay, great. I would like to score you, assess the likelihood of an opportunity, and then we can, like, get on a call to answer your questions. So, like, let's book a discovery call first, right? Um, we need we need to understand a help with what, like, and that doesn't mean that somebody should call the number on your website and be connected to the most senior subject matter expert in your company in 20 seconds or less. But it means for your prospects, for your business, you need a bridge there between the reasons that people raise their hands and what kind of help they need and how they want that help as they are navigating their journey, not your sales process, right? And I feel like we're maybe beating the same drum that we beat every week here, but you gave the example of a technical, let's say the technical role on a buying committee. Like, let's let's try to span not just the hand raiser experience, but let's span an organization from the old way of thinking to the new way of thinking here with this conversation, if we can. Like, let's say we have a buying committee and you have an economic buyer, you have a technical buyer, and then you maybe have like an operations or adoption person involved, right? Um, the technical buyer owns the spec. They know exactly what they need. They know its dependencies, both up and down the stack. They know about timelines. They know about acceptance criteria, et cetera. And this applies in manufacturing. This applies in software. This applies in fleet vehicle purchases. It applies everywhere. If you have a technical buyer, that person is like, what's their what would you argue their top three priorities are, abstractly?
Uh, can does this actually solve the problem? Uh, can it solve our version of that problem? And if we were to go with your version of the solution, what does that look like? How would that process work?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say. I would have probably articulated maybe number two as like, how does my technical assessment of your solution align with my technical definition of our problem, right? Like, uh, whether that's tolerances or whatever, SLA.
Yeah, I love that.
The
I'm glad you made that like clarification, because that's where their assessment of your solution is based on their information that they may or may not have received, like from you,
right,
because you didn't have anything but a talk to sales button ready. So now they can go ask AI. They've been able to ask Google for a while. Should they come into contact with your competition, the competition might give them some information, right? And this
yeah,
idea of, like, as you mentioned, like the will to blockade the information because we don't want competitors to see it. It's usually landed pretty quickly when I would say, something like, for every one competitor that you're keeping the information from, it's 100, 1,000 or more possible customers that you're also keeping that information from.
right, yeah. That is absolutely true.
And in reality,
Weighing the
you're not
good,
keeping the information from the competitor. They're getting it, right? And if
right,
and they're happy to share that information in their story with whoever asks about it, right? So do you want to own the narrative of your own stuff or not?
right. Yeah, and for technical assessments, I mean, it's especially clear. It's a great example, and it's why I honed in on that. Is um, the most buyers, the technical role in a on a buying committee, they've assembled their requirements from a top-down whim of an executive. It's like, oh, it needs to be, you know, I heard that Node is popular, so we need to make sure that this software that we're buying runs in Node. And the tech person's like, oh boy, okay. Um, or it's from their past experience, like this purchase in other contexts, in other roles, other companies, or industry expectations like SLAs. But a technical role will have accumulated a whole, think of it as a spec list. The they've got 45 items on their list that is functionally like either a true false or does it fall within acceptable range of the values. Everybody on the buying committee has some form of this. They just are different, right? Like, do I feel one person's might be, do I feel like this is going to be a good fit? One person is like, can we get them to agree with our procurement terms and process, right? Is the implementation timeline compliant with the big financial transaction that we have happening in 18 months or whatever? That that hand raise, like, the if the speaking of like knowing your customer, if that technical buyer or the technical role on that buying committee, if they have veto power over this decision, then sales would better know that. But they often this is a pattern that I've seen, but oftentimes like they become the qualifier of the seller, not vice versa, right? So they don't want to be on 3 sales calls before they can talk to an engineer. They want to just talk to the engineer at 5 different prospective vendors and be like, yeah, these 3 meet it, so like we can keep going with them. There's no point in going deep with somebody that won't even tell us like, can you service what we do, right? Because the first 3 are going to be like, yeah, of course, like we'll take a look at your requirements eventually.
Yeah. And this
That's
came up yesterday, like from post sales perspective in value first delivery. But like the idea of letting value flow is at the heart of value first architecture and the value path. And if that person shows up with energy saying, let me talk to this person right now, and you get in the like that energy is something that's so hard to re-get later in the process. And if you try to block it, it's always for the wrong reasons of, oh, like we're not ready yet. We haven't done enough qualification on our side. Meanwhile, they could have saved everybody a bunch of time and effort in a positive, like for closed won or closed loss situations,
yeah,
right? Like if you let me talk to the engineer right now and it happens to check the box that we've been trying to check for the last year, none of the rest matters. Like we're buying right now,
right,
right?
yeah,
Like that stuff
yeah,
happens,
exactly.
right?
And in that example too, I mean, this is anecdotal, but in that example too, if you're again, let's use the range of values as an example. Can you get this part on this timeline within these tolerances? What sales going to say? Oh yeah, for sure, and like we'll just get a quote for it and blah blah blah, right? If the engineer talks to the engineer and they ask that question, the engineer is going to give you an answer with a lot more qualifications, and it depends, but every one of those is actually meaningful if you've ever been a party to these conversations. And they can say like, well, not in that timeline, but we can get those tolerances if this and that based on these changes and etc. And this flange on here, it's weird. Like, talk me through that. Oh, you don't need it then. So if not, then like, yeah, we can actually get that because of this, manufacturing constraint, etc. I don't know anything about manufacturing. I just have been
Well,
in
it's
some of those conversations.
yeah, well, it makes sense. Like if there's a team on one side, there needs to be a team on the other side. And like
Yeah,
for every example like that you just shared, there's also the example where sales is concerned because if they do talk to the engineer, and that's why they usually don't let them, the engineers might add a bunch more detail that wasn't asked for. And now, I mean, this is why I don't, uh, not good at being brought into a HubSpot sales process because I'm going to make sure the complexity of HubSpot is highlighted and that can slow down a deal. I'd say
right.
it's for good reason, but in the manufacturing situation, like engineers that are proud of the product and proud of their knowledge, like want to make sure that this is how it works. And maybe that is a scenario that causes a new decision process to happen that maybe didn't need to happen, right? But at the end of the
Right.
day, it's like help everybody identify themselves as the hand raisers or the important parts, important buying roles of the process. And on the other side, if they all showed what you would love as a salesperson, like, oh, you're in finance, you're the person. I would love to know that as soon as possible. Well, they want to
Right.
know who their counterpart is that is not sales on the other side.
Right. Yeah. If we take this straw man, admittedly, example that we're giving, and we fast forward into the future and say these companies have an established relationship, they've been working together for 10 years, and they've been through personnel changes, but like when company A needs something manufactured on a tight timeline, they go to company B and they collaborate. They say, we can't give you that part exactly on this timeline, but we can give you this if this can be made to met your needs or whatever, right? Like they meet in the middle. If that relationship existed, right, could exist at the like let's call it joint qualification hand raising stage, how much more effective would that relationship be in terms of everybody's time getting to close one faster, getting to close loss faster, figuring out if there's an actual fit, or if there's not a fit for this, what is there a fit for? Like, what are you guys good at helping us solve, right? That's how value flows
Yeah.
to your point. The we've been describing, it doesn't sound like it, but we've been describing what in the Who First framework we call a friction factor. There are some products are sold and some products are purchased. In high friction purchase contexts, which is like there are eight factors that, based on customer interviews across all different kind of disciplines and sales motions, these are the factors that I have heard from buyers that describe friction in a sales process, which isn't always bad. People think friction is bad. It's not. But these are the things that both can slow down, but also can give you traction to move that process forward. There's 8 friction factors. The one that we have been describing with this technical buyer is I call it what's in the box friction, which is when the buyer cannot from the outside or from what you have provided to them clearly understand what they're getting, what it does, what success looks like for this purchase. What's in the box, right? Like you in e-commerce, you often see that what's in the box. So the camera, the adapter, the instruction manual, lens cap, right? What am I getting when I buy this box from you? What's in here? If they can't figure that out at all, then maybe you're doing one of those surprise figurines things where the surprise and the unknown is part of the value. But in most other contexts, a clear understanding of what you get for your purchase gives you traction, accelerates, moves the purchase forward. And the less of that you have, the more that friction slows you down, right?
Yeah.
So a hand raiser, if that technical person is our hand raiser, they are saying like, hey, I need help understanding like what you do, what I get compared to what I need, right? So talk to sales or talk to engineering is one way for somebody to express the raising of a hand, right, and become a hand raiser. But let's speculate some other ways that we could provide a non-talk to experience to somebody like that to address that friction of not knowing what they get. Do you have any ideas to kick that off? Blue sky.
Tell them on the website like what they get, like show videos.
Yes.
You're making me feel better
Yes.
about my Let's Unbox HubSpot series, right? Where
That's a perfect example of addressing what's in the box friction, right? How
yeah,
does it work? Help me understand. Help me see how somebody like me has done this, right? Show me what they did specifically. Explain how this works to me, right? Like that is 100% unboxing is directly aligned with that friction.
yeah. And like when we search for that stuff, like obviously that was inspired by what we see on YouTube. It's just like it's an uncertainty gap that you're solving for,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it's just
Exactly.
like I might know, like I've always bought Google Pixels, but I'm interested to see what's in the next one. So if I can find a video of what's in the box, I'm more likely to move faster to that purchase, right? Because the other
Yeah.
option is going to the store and holding it and feeling it and, asking directly. But most of the time, I don't want to go to the store, right? So if you can help me find that information or explain it, uh, and there is, like, we've been talking a lot about not letting the buyer like show what they need help with. It all, like, when we can help them show what they need help with, now sales is in such a much better position to have a great conversation,
Yeah.
right? Because we know what they need help with, and maybe we already gave it to them. So now they're at another level of interest.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the your example of like, or the you said like I don't always want to go into the store, but you know, I would argue that this existed to some degree before, but I would say that Apple stores like really leveled this up in modern consumer commerce, which is like, let me go in and touch it, right? Like I can
Mhm.
pick up the phones and use them and see how light they are, how big they are, or see what the colors look like. There were, there was a time when technology or consumer electronics was in a box on a shelf, and maybe one or two models of something were available for you to see, but mostly not, right? It was you had picked it up and looked at it. Um, your website examples of like a configurator, right, is like experience on the website, or a like a an AR or a VR view of a product are also that, right? Like what does like make this thing real, whether it's an abstraction like software or a physical item, like help me understand what's there, right? So in the I mean, this is there's a lot of technical reasons as well as like business and liability and other reasons you wouldn't do this, but like upload the CAD of your part and we'll tell you whether we can manufacture it or not. Like that's uh, you know, it's a silly example, but is there a way that if your buyer, if you here's a clue, here's a way to transition this. If you listen to your sales calls and or your AI surfaces questions that indicate people don't clearly understand your configurations. What's included in, here's one, why would I get Sales Hub Pro versus Enterprise? Why would I get this is the HubSpot context for people who aren't deep in HubSpot. I want, do I need Data Hub? Do I need Smart CRM Hub, Enterprise with, and how is that priced compared to all of this? If you get questions like that, you're having what's in the box friction. People don't understand how to pick the right configuration for them and what they get for any given configuration that you quote, right? Like you give them a quote and you sound like, this sounds like it meets their needs. And they're like, well, I feel like I have 10,000 questions, but I can only think of two right now. So I'll ask those, but I don't know how to tell if this gets me what I need, right? And I might not find out for 6 months that it doesn't include the thing that I thought I was getting. If your sales calls have that, then a lot of those kinds of examples, you have what's in the box friction, and you've got to figure out a way to let people raise their hand, whether that's talk to sales or a configurator videos, case studies, maybe not traditionally presented, but a case study that explains, here's my problem and here's what happened and what I got. That's very good at clarifying what's in the box, right? What is and what is not in the box. So how you can serve a hand raiser with that has what's in the box friction. It doesn't have to necessarily be conversion oriented, but if you can figure out how to make real for them what is in the box, answer their question of what I'm getting, and then any conversion experiences that you need to, you can tie to that. But in terms, Chris, you referred to scoring, right? Like we can score whether somebody is spending a lot of time on our resources that are trying to alleviate what's in the box friction, right? Somebody who is looking at the, whatever, like these case study, these videos that explain, that do our unboxing, and a configurator connected to that. Okay, if I get this, what does this include? And let me see that. And if you know, it doesn't have to be like a logged in experience or a lead gated experience. But if you have somebody who is exhibiting a high level of interaction around these hand raiser experiences of help me understand what I get when I buy from you, then when they do click on that talk to sales button, or when you do provide an automated outreach, or you ping a sales rep to reach out and say like, hey, how's the configurator going? Seems like you are trying to figure out X. Let's talk about that. Let me help you unpack that need. And can I help you? Is there anything that doesn't make sense in there? Like, what gaps are you trying to fill in when you're doing this configurator? What's it not answering for you? Right. That's how you serve somebody raising their hand with friction in their buying process.
Yeah. You help them. Yeah, you give them
You
the
help
help.
them.
And I think that long-term relationship that you mentioned, and this is why the value path is built from this perspective. I know it's why, Who First exists too. If you start that relationship by actually helping them in the moment, like, guess what? That relationship is going to be like deeper trust and higher lifetime value and all of the things, versus them having to basically traverse your gauntlet just because you're in a position where they have to, because there's not a lot of options, or that's just how it's done, the buying process in that industry.
Right.
Like, they're like, okay, there's relief that they got the thing that they wanted, but the trust and the relationship, like if anybody shows up making things easier, like you're at risk of, like, and customer lifetime value is not going to be there. And so moving this effort to the front. And by the way, like anybody that's hearing phrases like unified context and unified data in support of what AI, like this, deciding how to do this up front has a way of making the data and the context just easier to maintain, easier to fill out, because it creates moments of like give and take, to where if you're providing value in that moment, you probably get to ask for a little more than an email address, right?
Yeah.
And people are willing, because it turns into a conversation and it's not like gated everything, right? So, and it's super interesting. And this is why, if you can relate it to an event in a conversation you're having in person, you would never say, well, some people do, right? That like, don't take that catalog until you give me, like, you got to give me your business card or something, right? Like, and it feels ridiculous. It looks ridiculous in the moment. Nobody likes that experience. But if you were to get to a moment 2 questions in, and then, you put a form in front of them to continue the conversation, like, there's nobody would do that, right? And
Right.
you don't have to do it.
Yeah. What did you say? The free exchange, free flow of value, right? At every stage of the conversation. I mean, that's that's what we're talking about here, right?
Yeah.
Like the nobody resents you being helpful, right? As part of that process. And if you're able to recognize those things and help people earlier, there's I think we're at time, so we can bring it in for a landing. There's 7 more friction factors, and we didn't even really go very deep on what's in the box friction. But I think we need to move on next week to talk about the next stage in the value path.
Yeah. I think the takeaway here is understand that, and like full transparency, when this framework, the value path framework, first was documented, the hand raiser was saying, I am buying, right? That very clearly became problematic in trying to cover these situations where there's lots of reasons that people raise their hand that they're not ready to buy, right? So when you can, if that, like, that needs to be your takeaway from this stage, they are saying, I need help. Is your reaction to them saying that actually providing help, right?
Yep.
And if
And
you
are
keep,
you
like, all the other decisions that you need to make get a lot easier, and you can move out of these like should we or should we not conversations where you just bury what you need to do behind like the feelings of everybody on the team, and
yeah.
get to the point where it's like, okay, that's a great idea, Ryan, but will that actually help them right now? And if the answer is no, table it for later, right?
Right. Yeah. The way that I would articulate that is, are you offering them help under the guise of, again, forcing them into your sales funnel? Or are you actually trying to offer them help? Are you listening to what they need help with and then actually willing and able to provide that help? You probably have buried in your data somewhere the kinds of things that people actually want help with, and it's being masked by, again, them flowing like right into your sales process. And what you ask isn't what did they need help with and how did we help them. What you ask is, well, were they qualified or not? And the oftentimes you get a lot of false negatives. Oh, they weren't qualified because they weren't ready to buy yet, or their order wasn't big enough, or it was a different thing, and they had one of these other kinds of questions, right? They didn't know
Yeah.
what was in the box, so they didn't know what to ask. They were trying to figure out if you could help them, and kind of got the runaround and sort of like, well, I guess they don't do what we do because I keep trying to ask and I keep getting non-answers, right? And then so you disqualify them, right? Lost opportunity because of that miscommunication.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you look at the email thread and it's like gold in terms of like they
Exactly.
told you
Yes.
exactly how, and you might have even helped them, but because they didn't, like, they weren't BANT qualified, like, it doesn't make it into the system. And those are the things
Yep.
that it's really fun to watch AI like help with that right now and find some of those things. So yeah, we'll be back next week with the buyer stage, where we'll really start to dig into the buying group concept and how to really navigate, I think, on both sides, like making sure everybody has what they need to move forward. And it's funny, like, this is all connected. If you know that you are solving for I need help at hand raiser stage, now in the buyer stage, it's easy to tell your sales team all we're doing is helping them buy, right? And just all of these words start to matter and start to add up and make things easier. So we'll continue that journey next week. And until that time, everybody have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much, Oaks.
Have a good week.